There are many men who want me. That was what my wife said to me. Not in a fit of anger. Not as a desperate attempt to salvage a crumbling marriage. No, she said it with a smirk, arrogant, cruel, and full of venom. I had suspected her betrayal for months. The late nights, the hushed phone calls, the scent of unfamiliar cologne lingering on her skin. I wasn't a fool. I saw the signs. But I had waited, watching in silence as she dug her own grave. I gave her enough rope, and now she was dangling at the end of it, oblivious. She thought she was untouchable. She thought I was weak. She was wrong. When she said those words, she expected me to beg, to fight, to grovel at her feet like a dog. She had already won in her mind. She had been playing the role of the doting wife for too long, and now, she wanted to be free, to be desired, worshipped, ruined by the men who she believed were lining up for her. So I left. I walked out the door without a word, and in that moment, she didn't know it yet, but I had taken everything from her. The first step was patience. I didn't yell, I didn't confront her with the evidence I had gathered. No, I let her think she was in control. I had access to everything, her phone, her emails, her hidden accounts. She was careful, but not careful enough. She was playing checkers, while I was playing chess. There were 3 men. One was her coworker, a pathetic excuse for a man who sent her cringeworthy love notes and promises of a future together. The second was a gym rat, some muscle-headed fool who thought sleeping with another man's wife was a conquest worth bragging about. And the third? Well, the third was the most interesting. A married man. A man with more to lose than she did. I let them have her. I let them enjoy the taste of stolen fruit, because I knew the reckoning was coming. And when it came, it would be devastating. I didn't leave her homeless. No, that would be too easy. Instead, I set the stage for her own destruction. First, the financials. I drained our accounts strategically, leaving just enough for her to think she was stable, until she wasn't. The house. Mine. The car? Mine. The savings she thought she had hidden away? Gone. I transferred everything slowly, methodically, ensuring that by the time she noticed, it would be too late. Then, the exposure. I sent anonymous messages to each of her lovers. I crafted them carefully, feeding their insecurities, planting seeds of doubt, twisting the knife until they began to question everything. It didn't take long for them to turn on her. The coworker ghosted her, probably terrified of losing his job. The gym rat? He wasn't interested in a woman with baggage, just a quick lay. Once the fun was over, so was he. But the married one. Oh, he was the most volatile. His wife found out. And she was not a woman to be crossed. It was almost too perfect. I watched from the shadows as her life unraveled thread by thread. The men who once desired her now avoided her like the plague. Her boss started keeping his distance, her friends whispered behind her back. She was losing everything, and she didn't even know why. And then, the final nail in the coffin. I came home one last time. She was sitting at the dining table, staring at the unopened eviction notice like it was a foreign language. When she saw me, her expression shifted from shock to something else, relief. "You came back," she whispered, as if she hadn't spent months spitting in my face. I walked over, leaned down, and whispered in her ear. "There are many men who want you." Then I left. And this was only the beginning. The door clicked shut behind me, the echo of it lingering like the final note of a requiem. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could already picture the expression on her face, the slow realization dawning, the flicker of panic setting in. She was too proud to chase after me, too stubborn to admit that she was drowning. I walked away from the ruins I'd set ablaze, but my revenge was far from over. It didn't take long for the calls to start. At first, she was calm, her voice dripping with the same condescension she'd always used when she thought she was in control. "We need to talk. I know you're upset, but we can work this out." I didn't answer. The next day, the tone shifted. "Why are there overdraft fees on the account? Did you forget to transfer the rent money?" Still, I said nothing. By day 3, her facade cracked. "Where the F are you? I know you're doing this on purpose. Grow up and answer your phone." That voicemail? I saved it. It was music to my ears. While she was unraveling, I was busy setting the next trap. I reached out to the married lover's wife. No anonymous messages this time, I wanted her to know exactly who was exposing the truth. I sent her screenshots, emails, receipts. Every sordid detail laid bare. I even included a little note. Thought you deserved to know who's been sleeping in your bed while you weren't looking. A friend. The fallout was immediate. The wife didn't just confront her husband, she went nuclear. Filed for divorce, took the kids, the house, and half his assets. The man who once promised my wife a life of luxury was now living in a cheap motel, drowning in legal fees and self-pity. I'd like to say I felt bad. I didn't. A week passed before she showed up at my door. She looked nothing like the woman I'd married. Her makeup was smudged, hair disheveled, eyes wild with desperation. She didn't knock, she pounded, fists slamming against the wood like she could break through sheer will. I opened the door just enough to see her, leaning casually against the frame. "What do you want?" I asked, voice cold, detached. She stared at me, disbelief etched across her face. "What do I want? What the hell is wrong with you? You drained our accounts, you've ruined my life." I laughed. Actually laughed. The audacity was almost impressive. "No," I replied. "You ruined your life. I just helped speed up the process." Her face twisted with rage, but beneath it, I saw fear. She was losing control, and she knew it. She tried to play the victim, spinning tales of how I'd abandoned her, how I was the villain. But her words held no power anymore. She was shouting into a void. Eventually, she broke down. The anger faded, replaced by something pitiful, tears streaming down her face, hands trembling. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I have nothing left." I looked her dead in the eyes. "Good." And I shut the door in her face. Her humiliation was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I wanted her to feel truly alone. I contacted her employer anonymously, sharing details about her extracurricular activities. Turns out, companies don't like scandals. She was let go within days. No job. No money. No friends. I could have stopped there. But why would I? I sold the house, our house, the one she decorated with dreams of a future that never existed. I made sure the real estate agent scheduled the walkthrough while she was still living there, just to watch her squirm. She begged me to reconsider, tears streaming down her face as she stood in the empty living room. The same room where she'd probably whispered sweet lies to her lovers. "I have nowhere to go," she sobbed. I shrugged. "Maybe one of the many men who want you can help." And then I walked away. You'd think that would be the end of it. But life has a funny way of adding its own cruelty. Months later, I got a message from her. No anger this time. Just a simple line. "I'm pregnant." I stared at the message for a long time, letting the weight of those words sink in. And then I smiled. Because I knew it wasn't mine. She didn't ask for help. She didn't need to. She just wanted me to know. To know that even after everything, I was still in her head. But here's the thing, while she was trying to pull me back into her chaos, I was already free. I never responded. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's indifference. The message sat on my phone, glaring at me like it was daring me to respond. "I'm pregnant." No name, no pleasantries, just those two words. I stared at it for a moment, felt absolutely nothing, and then set my phone down. There was no need to reply. I knew why she sent it, not because she needed me, but because she wanted me to need her. She wanted to reel me back into her collapsing world. But I wasn't the same man anymore. She had burned the bridge, and I'd made sure to salt the earth beneath it. Days passed, and curiosity didn't creep in like she probably hoped. There was no late-night pondering, no wondering what if. I knew the answer already. It wasn't mine. Still, I couldn't resist twisting the knife one last time. I sent her a message. "Congratulations. Hope you figure out who the father is." Simple. Precise. Enough to rip open the fragile scab she was desperately trying to protect. Within minutes, my phone lit up, calls, texts, voice messages, each one more frantic than the last. She spewed venom between sobs, accusing me of being heartless, cruel, a monster. And maybe I was. But if I was a monster, she made me this way. Through mutual friends, I heard whispers of her downfall. She was couch surfing, bouncing between people who still tolerated her out of pity. No job, no stability, and now, pregnant, alone, clinging to the scraps of her former life. The men she thought would worship her? Gone. Her family? Disappointed and distant. It was poetic, really. She had built her kingdom on lies, and when the walls crumbled, all that remained was the wreckage of her own making. But karma wasn't done with her yet. Months later, I received another message. This one was different. No threats, no anger, just desperation. Please. I need your help. I have no one else. I almost deleted it without reading the rest, but curiosity got the better of me. She told me the man she thought was the father had vanished. He wanted nothing to do with her or the child. She was drowning in debt, her health was deteriorating, and worst of all, she was scared. Scared to be alone. Scared to face the consequences of her choices. And for a moment, a brief, fleeting moment, I considered replying. Not out of sympathy, but because I realized there was one last thing I could do to break her completely. I agreed to meet her. She suggested a small cafe, neutral ground. When I arrived, she was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee that had gone cold. She looked like a shadow of her former self, hollow, brittle, like one strong gust of wind could shatter her into pieces. She tried to smile when she saw me, but it faltered almost immediately. I sat down, leaned back, and waited. She stumbled through pleasantries, trying to mask the fear in her voice. But I didn't say much. I just watched her squirm, watched the facade crack bit by bit. Finally, she broke. I need your help, she whispered, eyes brimming with tears. I don't have anyone else. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider her words. Then I leaned forward, met her gaze, and said, I'm glad you're suffering. Her face crumbled. The hope drained from her eyes like water from a sinking ship. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just stared at me, stunned, as if the words physically slapped her. Then, the tears came. And I watched every single one. I stood up, leaving a few bills on the table, not for her, but for the coffee I didn't drink. Before I walked away, I delivered the final blow. I could have helped you. But you're not worth saving. And with that, I left her there, alone, broken, drowning in the consequences she created. I never heard from her again. No more desperate texts. No more voicemails. She faded into the background, a cautionary tale etched into the shadows of my past. But every now and then, when life gets quiet, I wonder if she still thinks about me. If she remembers the man she underestimated. The man who didn't just walk away. The man who made sure she'd never recover. I expected silence after that final meeting. And for a while, that's exactly what I got. No messages. No calls. No desperate attempts to claw her way back into my life. She was finally gone. But I should have known better. A woman like her never disappears quietly. It was late when I got the first call. An unknown number. I usually ignored them, but something in me, curiosity, maybe, made me answer. I didn't say a word. I just listened. At first, it was quiet, just the sound of someone breathing. Then a whisper. I'm sorry. Click. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the screen for a long moment before setting my phone down. I knew it was her. Days passed. Then weeks. I convinced myself it was nothing, a moment of weakness on her part. Then I saw her. I was out with some friends, enjoying the life I'd rebuilt, when I caught a glimpse of her across the bar. She looked different. Thinner. Pale. Dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in weeks. And she was alone. She saw me, too. For a moment, I thought she might approach, but she didn't. She just stared. A ghost of the woman she once was. I raised my glass in a silent toast. And then I turned my back on her. A few nights later, another message. I need to talk. Please. I ignored it. Then another. Just 5 minutes. I swear. Then another. I don't know what to do anymore. I should have blocked her. Should have deleted the messages and moved on. But something about the last one made me pause. She didn't know what to do anymore? Good. That meant my revenge was complete. One night, I got home late to find something waiting for me. An envelope. No return address. Inside was a single note, written in her handwriting. You win. That was it. 2 words. No explanation. No plea for sympathy. Just a bitter admission of defeat. I burned the note without reading it twice. Because I already knew the truth. She had nothing left. And now, neither did I. Not anger. Not hatred. Not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. Because when you destroy someone completely, you don't just take their soul. You lose a piece of your own. That was the last I ever heard from her. She vanished after that. No one knew where she went. Some say she left the city. Others say she never really left at all, just faded into the background, too broken to exist in the world she once ruled. But I know the truth. She became exactly what she made me. A ghost. And now, when I walk through the streets we once shared, sometimes I swear I still see her. A shadow in the corner of my eye. A whisper in the wind. A reminder that no matter how much you win, some scars never fade. For a while, it seemed like the world had finally reset itself. No more messages. No more sightings. No more desperate pleas from a woman I had already erased from my life. She was gone. But the thing about ghosts? They never really stay buried. It happened on a cold morning, months after her final message. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, when I heard a knock at the door. A slow, deliberate knock. 3 times. I didn't get visitors. When I opened the door, I wasn't sure what I was expecting. But it sure as hell wasn't her father. He looked like he had aged 10 years since the last time I'd seen him. Deep lines carved into his face, his once powerful frame now carrying the weight of something heavier than time. He didn't speak at first. He just stared at me, eyes burning with something I couldn't quite name. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice even, unshaken. He exhaled, slow and controlled, as if he was fighting the urge to put his fist through my skull. "You've done enough," he finally said. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Then why are you here?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was hers. He held it out to me, his expression unreadable. "She left this before she disappeared," he said. "Figured you should see it." I didn't take it. I didn't want it. But I read it anyway. The note was short. Almost too short. I never wanted it to end like this. That was it. No apology. No anger. No hatred. Just a hollow sentence, like a whisper from the grave. When I looked back up, her father was still watching me. "She's gone," he said. I kept my expression blank. "And?" His jaw tightened. "And I hope you're happy." Then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with nothing but a piece of paper and a cold, empty feeling in my chest. I closed the door. Sat back down. Finished my coffee. But the weight of her last words settled deep, curling around my ribs like an iron chain. I never wanted it to end like this. And for the first time, I wondered. Did I? I had spent so much time destroying her. Tearing apart everything she built, dismantling her life piece by piece. And I had won. She was ruined. Alone. Erased from existence. So why the hell did I feel like I had lost something, too? I told myself it didn't matter. That she had deserved every ounce of suffering I had delivered. But late at night, when the world was silent, I couldn't help but wonder. Did I go too far? Revenge is supposed to be satisfying. It's supposed to fill the void left behind by betrayal, to balance the scales of justice with pain equal to what was inflicted. But as I sat there, staring at her final words, I felt nothing. No joy. No satisfaction. Just emptiness. I tried to push it from my mind. She was gone. That was the important part. Whether she skipped town or simply faded into the background, she no longer existed in my world. But the city had a way of whispering secrets, and before long, I started hearing things. That she had lost everything. That she had been staying in shelters, hopping from place to place, barely scraping by. That she was sick. That she was pregnant and alone. At first, I ignored it. It wasn't my problem. She made her bed. Let her rot in it. But then I got the call. It came from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then another. And another. Finally, I picked up. A woman's voice. Soft, hesitant. "Is this?" I knew who she was before she even finished. A nurse. From a free clinic. She listed you as her emergency contact. I almost laughed. The woman who had spent months betraying me, humiliating me, lying to my face, had nowhere else to turn. "How bad is it?" I asked, surprising myself. There was a pause. Then, "You should come see for yourself." I almost didn't go. Almost. But something pulled me there, an unseen force I didn't want to acknowledge. When I arrived, the clinic was small, run down. The kind of place where people go when they have no other options. And there she was. Lying on a cot in the corner of the room. She looked like death. Pale, weak, barely holding on. For a second, I didn't recognize her. Then she opened her eyes. And for the first time in months, I saw her. Not the liar. Not the cheater. Not the woman who had shattered my life. Just a broken human being. A dying ember of the fire she used to be. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I sat down beside her, silent. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then she whispered, "Did you ever love me?" I stared at her. At the woman who had betrayed me, torn me apart, ruined me. And I answered truthfully. "Yes." A tear slipped down her cheek. And then, for the first time since this war began, I saw regret in her eyes. Revenge isn't free. I had won. I had taken everything from her. But as I sat there, watching her fade away, I realized something. Winning didn't feel like I thought it would. It didn't fix the past. It didn't erase the scars. It just left me standing alone. With nothing but the ruins of a love that once was. I should have left. I should have stood up, turned my back on her one final time, and walked away for good. But I didn't. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the humiliation, the destruction, I still remembered who she used to be. And I wasn't sure if I was looking at the woman who ruined my life, or just the wreckage of someone I once loved. She swallowed hard, her breath shaky, as if even speaking was exhausting. I didn't want this," she whispered. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I didn't believe her. She had wanted this, maybe not the suffering, but the freedom, the excitement of being desired by other men. She had wanted the thrill of infidelity, the power of knowing she had options. But choices have consequences. And now, she was drowning in hers. Still, I waited. I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if there was anything left of the woman I once knew. Maybe I wanted her to admit, in her final moments of desperation, that she had destroyed herself. Or maybe, just maybe, I wanted a reason to hate her a little less. Her eyes flickered to mine, searching for something, sympathy, forgiveness, anything. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "No," I said. "But I'm not miserable either." Her face twisted, as if my answer hurt her more than if I had just said yes. She nodded weakly, then looked away. I thought one of them would stay," she admitted, barely above a whisper. I already knew what she meant. She thought one of her lovers, the men she'd chosen over me, would have stepped up. But they hadn't. They had used her, taken what they wanted, and discarded her when she was no longer fun. She had thrown away a life with me for a fantasy. And that fantasy had devoured her. She took a deep breath, her fingers gripping the thin hospital blanket like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. I was wrong. The words hung between us, heavier than anything else she had ever said. I should have felt triumphant. I should have relished the moment. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? For her to suffer. To break. To realize, too late, that she had ruined herself. But as I sat there, looking at the hollow woman in front of me, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even satisfied. I was just tired. Tired of the war. Tired of the hate. Tired of carrying the weight of something that no longer existed. And so, I made my choice. I reached into my jacket, pulled out my wallet, and placed a wad of cash on the table beside her bed. Her eyes widened in shock. "What are you?" "I don't forgive you," I cut in. "I never will. But I won't let you die like this." She started to cry, silent, shaking sobs that racked her frail body. And for the first time in a long, Long time. I walked away without looking back. I never saw her again after that night. I don't know what happened to her. Maybe she got better. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she took that money and tried to rebuild her life. Or maybe it was too late for that. But here's what I do know. When I left that hospital, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because revenge hadn't freed me. But letting go did. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for another call. Another text. Another desperate plea. The war was over. And yet, as I walked away from that hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Not her. Not us. Something deeper. Something I couldn't quite name. Because for all the pain, for all the destruction, revenge had left me with nothing but silence. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And slowly, I started rebuilding. I threw myself into work. Into the gym. Into anything that reminded me I was still me, not just the man she had cheated on. Friends noticed the change. "You seem different," one of them said over drinks one night. "Lighter." I smirked. Took a sip of my whiskey. "Yeah," I said. "Guess I am." And it was true. I wasn't haunted by her anymore. She was just a ghost, a shadow in the past. Or at least, that's what I told myself. One night, months later, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. But something made me check. It was a single text. No name. No introduction. Just 4 words. "Thank you. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. Long enough for the message to blur. Then, without replying, I deleted it. And for the first time since she destroyed me, I finally felt free.